Hey guys, welcome back to our channel. How are y'all doing? I hope y'all are having an amazing day. I am back again, finally, with a video. I'm sorry I took so much time. I know I keep saying this in every video, but I'm genuinely sorry. I hope in the meantime you actually enjoyed my podcast. I'm gonna upload more episodes. But yeah, like I promised, I was doing this vampire origin story series and I said I'll make part 3 of it. So I'm here with part 3 of the vampire myth, vampire origin story. I haven't done this in a really long time. I hope I haven't forgotten how to film a video. Anyway, without further delay, I'm gonna get started. Okay, so for today's video, I'm going to talk about the story that I didn't talk about in the first part of this series, this vampire origin myth series. If you have watched the first part, you would know that I talked about the first ever vampire mentioned in the ancient myth, and I talked about Ambrogio, the myth of Ambrogio, but I didn't tell you the story. So I thought in this episode I'm going to tell you the story so that you will be able to understand it a bit more, why Ambrogio is known as the first ever vampire. Now, for those of y'all who don't know, I keep forgetting things, so I hope you don't mind if I read from my notepad. And like I do with all my videos, I'm going to divide this video in sections so that it is easier for you to understand. Now, without further delay, I'm going to start with the story. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to talk about is the scriptures at Delphi and the oracles at Delphi. What does this mean? So, first things first, what is this Delphi place? Delphi is this place which was called Pythia in legend. This place served as the seat of the Pythia, who was actually the main oracle. Now, the Pythia was actually not a person, it was more like a post of the high priestess, and the Pythia were actually like different people. Different people became Pythias. Now, the ancient Greeks considered this land, Delphi, as the center of the earth, which was marked by a stone monument called the Omphalos. I think it's Omphalos. Now, according to Suda, which is a 10th century Byzantine encyclopedia of the ancient Mediterranean world, the name Delphi was derived from Delphine, a serpent that was killed by god Apollo. What was the work of the Pythia? Now, here comes the oracles at Delphi, because the Pythia would actually give oracles to people. Now, this Delphi is actually the home of the temple of Apollo, and Apollo would talk through his oracle, his priestess, Pythia. Now, there were eligibility criteria for the Pythia, and while giving oracles, the Pythia would be in a trance-like state and would let Apollo possess her, and then would prophesy in a few words. These oracles were later written down by the priests, and these are what actually we call the scriptures at Delphi. So in the scriptures of Delphi, there are various sections. Now, the section that is of importance to us today, it is known as the Vampire Bible. So there is a section in the scriptures of Delphi which is known as the Vampire Bible. Now, it is called a Vampire Bible, but it is not really a religious text. It just contains the story of vampire history. That is, it contains the vampire origin story, which is the story of Ambrogio. Now, if you haven't watched the first part of this series, you have to go watch it. Or maybe you can watch this video, and then if you are interested, then you can watch the first and the second part. Oh, there is also a second part of this series, by the way, where I talked about a scientific explanation to the vampire origin story. This one is actually the third part. Now, here comes the story of Ambrogio. Now, there's a lot, okay? The story of Ambrogio. It's long. I'm gonna make it like short and long story short, kind of, very concise. But there's a lot of things that is going on in this story. So stay with me, try to follow along, and yeah, let's get started. It's interesting. Now, who is this man Ambrogio? This man Ambrogio was a young man who left his native land, which is now known as Italy, and he went to Greece because he wanted his fortune to be told by the Pythia at Delphi, this Apollo's temple as Delphi. Now, he goes to the Pythia, and as it goes, the Pythia gives the oracle, but only gives the oracle in a few words, in a cryptic language. Ambrogio was also told a bunch of words and he didn't understand. He was like, okay, what did you just say? So he was told, the curse, the moon, the blood will run. Interesting, isn't it? He was really confused. He was like, okay, what am I supposed to think about it? What does it mean? So he went and sat outside the temple. He was really overwhelmed because he couldn't understand what was told to him, and he was thinking, what could it mean? In the next morning, while he was returning to town, he met a beautiful girl dressed in white who was going towards the temple. Now, Ambrogio was very attracted to her. Ambrogio was like, wow, she's so beautiful, I should go talk to her. So he went and talked to her. He introduced himself, and then he came to know that her name was Selene. Now, this lady Selene was a maiden in the temple of Apollo because her sister was one of the oracles. Now they talked, they introduced each other, and Ambrogio was so attracted to her. Every morning he would meet Selene before Selene would start her duties, and eventually, they fell in love. But remember, Ambrogio came from Italy. Now he has to return to Italy. Before the day of his return, he proposed to Selene to marry her, and Selene accepted because she was in love. Ambrogio said that he will make all the arrangements and asked her to meet at dawn the next morning. But then there was a plot twist. So Apollo, the sun god, he was very angry at Ambrogio. Why? Because Selene was a maiden in his temple, and he was angry that Ambrogio was trying to influence one of his maidens. He was like, how dare you, Ambrogio? How dare you influence one of my maidens? Now, since he's the sun god, he cursed Ambrogio that whenever Ambrogio would go out in the sun, sunlight would actually burn his skin. So if Ambrogio tried to go out in the sun, his skin will be burned, so Ambrogio won't be able to meet Selene. Now, Ambrogio was very sad about it because he promised Selene that he would meet her but couldn't meet her. So he was distressed and he went to Hades, the god of the underworld. Now, when Hades came to know about Ambrogio's story, he said, okay, I'm gonna offer you a deal. Now, Hades said that he will offer protection to Ambrogio and Selene, both Ambrogio and Selene, but in exchange of a silver bow that belongs to Artemis, who was the mistress of animals and the hunt. Now, Hades said that he would give Ambrogio a magical wooden bow and 11 arrows to hunt. And he said that if Ambrogio uses those and then hunt animals and then offer them to Artemis, then Ambrogio would gain the favor of Artemis, and as a result would have access to Artemis's silver bow. Now, here's the plot twist. The deal that Hades offered, Ambrogio could not reject the deal, because if he refused the deal, then he would be stuck in the underworld forever and thus will never be able to meet Selene. On the other hand, if he accepted the deal, then he had to leave his soul in the underworld with Hades as collateral. So it's like you're stuck between land and water, and there is a crocodile in the water and tiger on land, and you don't know where to go. So Ambrogio had no choice but to accept the deal because he wanted to, meet Selene. So Ambrogio was intelligent. He found out a way to communicate with Selene. He would kill a swan with the magical bow, and then using its feather as quill and its blood as ink, he would write a letter, and then he would leave that in the meeting spot where he and Selene would meet, and he would leave it before the sunrise because he can't go out during when the sun is out. He would leave the letter there, and he wrote everything about what's going on about his situation and everything in the letter. And then he offered this animal to Artemis. Now he continued doing this for 44 days. He would write love letters and poems to Selene, and he would give this dead swan to Artemis as a gift. And Selene, on the other hand, she received the letters, but she continued her temple duties because she didn't want to make Apollo even more furious. And Apollo actually secretly liked Selene. I forgot to say this. That's why he was more furious with Ambrogio. Now everything was going well and good. It happened for 44 nights, as I said, but on the 45th night he had the last arrow left with him, but he missed it. He couldn't kill a swan. So he started crying because he won't be able to write a letter to Selene, nor would he be able to offer a swan to Artemis. Now Artemis felt really bad for him, so she came to him, and Ambrogio pleaded to her, said, please give me your silver bow so that I can hunt an animal and write a letter to Selene. Now Artemis, after hearing Ambrogio's pleas, she really felt pity for him, so she agreed. She gave her silver bow to Ambrogio. But Ambrogio, remember his deal with Hades, the god of the underworld? So Ambrogio got hold of the silver bow and ran with it to give it to Hades. Now Artemis realized that Ambrogio has betrayed her, and so she was enraged and cursed Ambrogio that silver would burn his skin. So think about the characteristics that vampires have. First, they can't go out in the sunlight. Second, they can't touch silver. See, Ambrogio is slowly getting all this characteristics of a vampire. Now Ambrogio dropped the silver bow because it was giving him pain, and he apologized to Artemis and then told Artemis that he had no other option other than to give it to Hades. Now Artemis, after hearing everything, she actually felt pity for Ambrogio, so she said, okay, I'm going to give you a deal. So there is another deal that Ambrogio was offered, and Ambrogio again could not refuse this deal. She promised him, Ambrogio, that she would make Ambrogio immortal, you see, and then she said she would also give Ambrogio fangs to draw blood from swans or animals so that he can use that blood to write letters to Selene. You see, fangs and immortal. She also said that she would make Ambrogio a great hunter. So fangs, hunter, and immortal. So he would use his fangs to draw blood from animals and then write poems for Selene. And he would also be an immortal and a great hunter. All these characteristics are of a vampire. I mean, not the poem writing part, but all the other things, But in exchange, Ambrogio has to take Selene and run away from the Apollo's temple and go somewhere else and can only worship Artemis. And also she said that Ambrogio and Selene would not be able to touch each other because Artemis was herself a virgin and both of them had to follow that. Ambrogio accepted. Ambrogio killed a swan, wrote a letter to Selene explaining everything, and asked her to meet him in a particular ship of a port. Selene left the temple before Apollo could realize, and she went to the docks. There she went to the ship, the particular ship, and went down the hull and found a coffin with a note in it, a wooden coffin with a note in it. And the note said that as soon as she arrived, she must ask the captain to set sail and do not open the coffin before it's dark. At night, Celine opened the coffin and found Ambrogio inside, well and alive. Now the couple, they reached Ephesus in that ship, and they lived there happily ever after for a while. Not happily ever after, they lived happily for a while, where they would live inside a cave in the morning, and at night they would worship Artemis in her temple. Now you guys remember I said that Ambrogio was made immortal by Artemis. I mean, Artemis promised Ambrogio that she would make him immortal. Now that's a problem. Why? Because he was immortal, he wasn't growing old, he wouldn't die. On the other hand, Celine was still a mortal. So with time, Celine grew old. Celine grew older, but Ambrogio was still ageless and young. So he became sad because he knew that he would lose Celine very soon. Now one night, Ambrogio slayed a swan and offered it to Artemis and requested her to make Celine immortal like him. Now Artemis was pleased with Ambrogio for all the years of service that he offered to Artemis. So Artemis said, okay, I'll give you a deal. Now here, like this part of the story, it becomes like a full circle, you know, with all the characteristics of a vampire like that Ambrogio has been getting so far. It just gets complete here. Why? Because the goddess said, Artemis said, that Ambrogio can touch Celine just one time to bite her and drink her blood, which will kill Celine's mortal body. But after that, whoever would drink Ambrogio's blood will become immortal. Now initially Ambrogio was, reluctant to do it because of course he loved her, and that would actually, biting her would actually kill her. But when Celine heard of this, Celine wanted to be with Ambrogio forever. So she requested Ambrogio to do it. So Ambrogio bit her neck and drank her blood. Now Ambrogio put Celine's lifeless body on the ground. Her body began to glow. Celine's body began to glow. And then Celine's spirit rose up to the moon to meet Artemis there, and the moon started glowing brilliantly. So Celine's spirit, when she went up to the moon, she became a goddess. She turned into a goddess, the goddess of moonlight, and since then every night she would come down, her moonlight would come down on earth to touch her lover Ambrogio. Now what happened to Ambrogio after that? There is a theory. Some say that after that Ambrogio returned to his city, Florence, and some people believe that Ambrogio is still today walking in the streets of Florence. He is immortal, he's a vampire. Now it's up to you what you want to believe. Alright, so that was the story of Ambrogio and Celine and the Vampire Bible and the scriptures at Delphi. I hope you found it interesting. If you like this video, then you might also like part 1 and part 2 of this video. Go watch it if you haven't already. And thank you so much for watching this video. I appreciate you guys so much. If you have made this far, thank you so much. I hope I could make this story, narrate the story in an interesting way. I hope I haven't lost my storytelling skill due to lack of practice. And also, important thing, I'm going to make another part of the series. I just keep on saying I'm going to make another part, because you see, this series wouldn't be complete if I don't talk about a real life vampire. I mean, a supposedly real life vampire. So that is what part 4 is going to be. Stay tuned, it's going to be interesting. I'm going to talk about a person who is known as a real life vampire. I'm really excited for this story, and I hope you will stay tuned for that one. See you again in another video and a podcast episode. Thank you so much. I love you guys so much. since we are talking about vampires, I have to mention, have you guys seen Vampire Jungkook? Okay, bye.